How's it going, everybody? Want to talk quite a bit about this topic that has really been making the rounds on social media, and that is Capcom president Haruhiro Sugimoto speaking about game development costs and game prices in general. So there's a lot to assess when it comes to this statement, and there's obviously gonna be that element of potentially things getting lost in translation, so I do want to bring that up. But it is certainly an interesting topic to discuss, especially because we had recently talked about the Callisto Protocol and how that game just had these wild, crazy ambitions, and when you look at the budget of a game like that, especially of a new IP, it's still releasing at $70, and 2 million copies sold being deemed a flop. It's kind of a reality check in terms of the state of the industry. But first of all, let's talk about what the Capcom president had to say. Noting, personally, I feel that game prices are now too low. Development costs are about 100 times higher than during the Famicom era, but software prices have not gone up that much. There is also a need to raise wages, considering the fact that wages are rising in the industry as a whole. I think raising unit prices is a healthy option for businesses. Well, to be fair, prices have gone up. I wasn't around during the 80s and early 90s for, some of those platforms, so I don't really recall exactly how pricing works, especially in comparison with how the dollar was viewed and everything like that. But as long as I've been around in the gaming industry and covering video games and talking about video games and, well, playing video games myself, game prices has certainly, they've certainly gone up. We went from $40 games to $50 games being very regular in the 360 era. $60 games became the standard, the 360 PS3 era, and now $70 games are the standard. However, let me offer you guys this as well. That $70 price tag, you look at it at face value and you're like, okay, games these days are $70. But are they really $70? Are they really $70? Because now, you do have things like a lot of premium editions, you do have a lot of digital deluxe editions, and that is all in a way to jack up the price of the game. Like, look at Mortal Kombat 1. That game's premium edition was $110, and the premium edition literally consisted of quote-unquote early access for the game, early access for the downloadable content, and the downloadable content itself. So you're baking in this added value into the game with these premium editions and whatnot. You've got things like microtransactions, you've got expansions being worked on, and to the credit of Capcom, I feel like they're pretty good in offering you a great game with every $60, $70 purchase. So really, Capcom hasn't really gone down the $60, or excuse me, the $70 hole yet, but generally speaking, as an industry-wide thing. But Capcom does a really good job in, giving you a sizable amount of content with your Monster Worlds of the world, and, eventually they'll do an expansion for a game like that, but I feel like an expansion for MH World and Iceborne was actually justified, as was the case with MH Rise, Resident Evil 4, Separate Ways. The argument can be back and forth. I think the digital deluxe edition of Separate Ways is the digital deluxe edition of the standard release of Resident Evil 4 is kind of a joke, but overall, that was a game that was well worth $60, and I think people were down to spend $10 on Separate Ways, which was like a 4-hour, piece of DLC. So, in one respect, I think Capcom has been one of the better studios in terms of offering you quality for the dollar invested. I look at like a Warner Brothers and see how they do stuff, with Mortal Kombat 1 especially. Like, Mortal Kombat 1, I think, is a little bit egregious, and I think, like, the fact that game didn't get panned a little bit for that practice, I don't know, like, I get it. Fighting games are always gonna be the ones that do always accentuate in that digital premium edition element, but I thought MK1, $110, guys, that's a lot of money. That's a lot of money when one of the big selling points was early, quote-unquote, early access. But, again, you are seeing a healthy amount of DLC, but I also do agree, I think it would be best for everyone involved if we could somehow scale the expectations of these games backwards, because yes, while game development costs is higher than ever, I really do question, and maybe, like, some of you guys will disagree with me on this, but I really do question, and I keep going back to this point, are games really that much better now than they were in the late 2000s, early 2010s? Like, I'll bring up the same examples that I always do. The Uncharted trilogy was great in the late 2000s, early 2010s. Sure, Uncharted 1 shows its age, but I think Uncharted 2 is still damn good, and I would play it. The Mass Effect trilogy, What's BioWare been doing these last couple of years or last decade or so after the release? I think Mass Effect 3 came out in 2012, so yeah, it's been a decade. They did okay with Inquisition, but you look at their outings, you know, Mass Effect Andromeda, Anthem, these are the games? These are the games? Like, bro, you drop ME2 today and I would still be like, this game is a banger, and I guarantee you, Mass Effect 2 didn't require the investment that some of these other projects are requiring. And also, think about the turnaround time for those games back in the day. Sure, the games were scaled back. Sure, they're not as visually impressive as they are now. And I get it, the idea of selling these games in that style, it'd be difficult to do. Obviously, this is more of a pipe dream, but I just offered to you guys how we had it back then versus today. Do you guys know Mass Effect 1 came out in the fall of 2007. Mass Effect 2 came out in January of 2010, I believe. And then Mass Effect 3 came out in March of 2012. 2 years in between. They released 3 Mass Effect games in the span of 4 years. Like, could you imagine us getting 3 games and 3 legit entries for a franchise in a 4-year span for any franchise these days? Like, by the time Horizon as a trilogy is done, a decade will probably have gone by. That's insane to think about, but that also goes to show the level of investment, the time, and the capabilities that these games need, and why, to be frankly honest, from a lot of these studios, we do see lesser games. I mean, Guerrilla for a long time, remember Killzone? They were putting out a Killzone game every 2 years. Like, Killzone 2 came out in 2009, Killzone 3 2011, and Killzone Shadowfall in 2013. Think what you want about Shadowfall, but yeah, like the game development time is expanding and expanding, and obviously with an expanded game development time, it's only theoretical that game costs are also increasing in terms of developing these games. There are some outlier studios that I just feel like are bandits in terms of how how quickly they put out games, especially to the scale that they put these games out. An Insomniac, a From Software. Some of these studios are just next level in terms of putting out quality games with today's expectations in mind, and then still delivering, you know, consistent and quality-filled games. But the idea of more expensive games, the issue is you would also have a diminishing level of return if you're starting to talk about $100, $150. Like, at that point, people are going to be priced out of gaming. And yes, you can compare it to the Famicom era. Gaming as a whole is way more popular now than it was in the Famicom era, at least at the top level, because don't get it twisted, for every, you know, game that's super successful, like a Baldur's Gate 3, there are just as many Immortals of Aveums and Callisto Protocols out there. They're just not talked about that much, but Callisto Protocol was a flop. Immortals of Aveum just did a bunch of layoffs at their studio, so it's not like every big budget title is a success. My concerning point is that you have these new IPs that are coming to the market with just these gigantic, gargantuan expectations, and I think that needs to be adjusted a little bit. Like, I don't think we can have games with the budget, especially with a new IP like a Callisto Protocol, all the time. Yes, there's certain publishers that just with their cachet, like a Bethesda, a Starfield can do that, but you know, a Callisto Protocol, a Immortals of Aveum, which Immortals of Aveum was just one game. I think everybody knew going into the release of that game, as flashy as it looked, it was gonna have trouble from a commercial standpoint. So, you know, there's a lot to dissect with this quote, and I just see this quote going around on social media a lot right now, but obviously a lot of layers to it. But I understand why the president of Capcom would be like, yo, we're dropping these great games, they're costing us more, like, we would like to be compensated for it, but Capcom is also crushing it from a sales standpoint, so there's that to consider as well. But let me know your thoughts in the comments section down below. Sound off there. At what point do you think games would be too expensive? Because, you know, I remember when the GTA 6 being a $150 story came out, and that just seemed ridiculous, and at a certain point, you're gonna price people out. But $70, it seems like, for the top level games, not every game, for the top level games, people will drop $70. God of War Ragnarok did great. Starfield, you know, the Game Pass era makes it a little bit more difficult to gauge how good a game like that does, but $70 I do think is a deal breaker for a lot of people when it comes to mid-level releases. And I'm not saying mid-level from a quality standpoint in terms of anticipation and expectations. Immortals of Aveum, Callisto, there's a game coming out from Don't Not Love You Guys, but Banishers, A Ghost of New Eden, I believe it's called. I think that game's gonna have some trouble at a $70 price tag, but you know, you could always wait on a sale for these games. You could always wait on a sale. But that'll do it for me. Let me know all of your thoughts down below. Thank you for watching, and goodbye. Hey guys, we hope you enjoyed the video, and if you did, make sure to hit the subscribe button, and if you're already subscribed, do us a favor and hit the bell icon. This way you'll be notified whenever we post a new video. That's the best way to keep up with all of our uploads, and we usually try to upload 2 videos a day. And with the bell icon hit, you'll be notified whenever we do upload a video. As always, thanks for watching.